Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. You find me in the car, and that's not just because I'm sitting here like some loner, it's because I'm going on a little bit of an adventure and I thought it would be fun to take you guys along with me. So, unless you've been living under a rock for the last few months, you will know that the WRC is visiting Saudi Arabia later this year. But what you may not know is that the Middle East Rally Championship is coming to the Kingdom this very week, and I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a preview of that event, and it might also just give us a little taster of what those WRC stages will look like later in the year. So we're going to hit the road, go and have a look and see what we can find. So, in terms of the rally this week, there is 192 kilometres of stages over 2 days. We've got 2 loops of 3 stages on each day. The rally is based in Jeddah, which, in case you don't know, is on the west coast of Saudi Arabia. It is the kingdom's second city. It's home to a few notable landmarks, including the world's tallest flagpole, the world's tallest fountain, and the historical district of Al Balad. It is also world renowned as the gateway to the 2 holy cities of Mecca and Medina, so it's a very, very important city in cultural and religious terms. The rally headquarters is at the Jeddah Corniche circuit, which is home to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, in case you weren't aware of that, which I suspect you probably are, and that is where the service park will be. That is where the crews will head out to the stages from. Speaking of the stages, we don't actually know at this stage what the WRC route is going to look like. The organisers of that event have promised us a unique event featuring a range of different landscapes, so we might see some different backgrounds and different terrain on each day of that rally, which is coming in November. But I think this is still a worthwhile exercise. I expect the WRC event will venture a little bit further out of Jeddah, perhaps towards the city of Taif, which is in the mountains, just the kind of southeast of Jeddah. So they might venture a bit further. And today we're a bit closer to Jeddah, so perhaps the stages I'm looking at today might feature on one of the days, would perhaps be my guess. So think of this as a kind of double preview. It's a preview of the Middle East round, but also a little taster of what might be to come in November. So I hope you'll join me for that, but I have talked enough. I think it is time to get on the road and see what we can find. You join me again at what I hope is the beginning of stage 1. My original plan was to get to the end of stage 1 because that is very near to the start of stage 2. However, if you look at the landscape behind me, you will see that there are many hills, dusty, rocky tracks that my Peugeot was not going to be able to drive down, and I think it was going to be very difficult to get to the end of stage 2. Maybe I'll try. But it's not easy. The terrain is not easy, and it's difficult to judge things on Google Maps in terms of where are passable tracks and where are not. So I think we are at the beginning of stage 1. There is a yellow rock behind me, which I hope is denoting where some signage will be put in the coming days. You can see a track winding its way over there, look, into the hills. So the start of the stage is quite rocky. We've got some big rocks at the side of the road. Could be tricky. It's going to be dusty. This is 14 kilometres. We're about 50 miles from the service park in Jeddah, just outside the city. So 14 kilometres in the dust. This stage runs at 7:45 a.m. and again just before 2. Keep in mind the temperature. Even at 7:45, I suspect it will be about 30 degrees. Could be nudging 40 by the afternoon run, depending on the weather. We haven't got into the high temperatures yet. It's usually starting to get quite warm around this time of year, but we're not there yet, so we'll see what happens. But you can see this is looking like a tough test. We've got lots and lots of sort of, it's not sand. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be a sand rally. Where I am right now, it's not that dissimilar to somewhere perhaps like Portugal, maybe even Sardinia, in places you've got some quite big stones, and you've just got dry, dusty gravel. And so I think in those terms, obviously for the Middle East crews, they'll be used to this kind of terrain. And even when we get to the WRC event, I think the terrain here probably won't be that frightening to them. I think they'll be fairly used to it. This is, maybe kind of Portugal type level, maybe a little bit rougher in places. So this is stage 1, 14 kilometres, as I said, disappearing that way. I don't know if we'll be able to get to the end of it. I might try. But yes, this is the terrain. Look at the lovely hills behind me. It does flatten out a little bit towards the end by the looks of it, looking at Google Maps. There are some areas over in the distance that way. You've got some valleys and lower lands between the hills where it does get a bit sandier, a bit less rocky. So you might see some of that, and a bit greener as well. It's quite quite sort of brownish yellowish grass up here, I know, but it does get a bit greener as you go down. The temperature's not too bad up here. We are a little bit higher than Jeddah, but as I said, expect 30 degrees plus. So this is stage 1. I think it's time to get back in the car and see where else we can find. So I'll see if I can get to stage 2, either the start or the end. Otherwise, we'll head to stage 3. You're just going to have to wait and see what happens, because right now, as I record this, I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, you're going to have to forgive me. I think I have made it near to the end of stage 2. I could not get to the start. You can see the hills in the distance. It was just not really passable in my car, unfortunately, to get that way. So I have come near to a major road, so I apologise if it's noisy. But this is the area where stage 2 finishes. And I talked about changing terrain, didn't I, for stage 1. So we had the hills behind us where I was earlier, quite rocky, quite hard ground, quite coarse sand. If you look here, however, the terrain is very different. I talked about how where it gets lower, it gets smoother, flatter, greener, and we have green, look. I don't think people would necessarily expect this here, would they? So we're in an area of farmland. I've driven past quite a few farms with camels and things, so it's a very, very different area, isn't it, to where the start of stage 1 was. Much finer sand, much fewer rocks, but obviously that 13 kilometers of stage 2 does start in that rockier region, so it looks like it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag terrain-wise. So it took me a while to get here, hence the sun going down in the background. I haven't been visiting the stages in running order because, as anyone will know, if you go to rallies, getting from one stage to another isn't always very easy because the crews get to drive through that stage to get to the next point. But if you have to drive around on the road, it can often take a lot longer. So a bit of a challenge, but gives you an idea, doesn't it, of the terrain. So it's just under 13 Ks for this one before they move on to stage 3. Very different terrain, very open. The weather is quite nice at the moment, but obviously by this point everyone will be back at service anyway, so they won't get to see this. It's still over 30 degrees, so it shows you just never really cools down. But yes, this is the terrain. This is what the end of the stage looks like, and it might be a little bit like this in the middle. So I'll show you the ground a little bit. So it's a lot softer, far fewer rocks, and just, yeah, very, very different. It shows, doesn't it, how quickly the terrain can change in somewhere that you think is a desert. So this is stage 2. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on here, interesting to see how that terrain change impacts things. So that's that. I think it's time to get into the car, isn't it? And venture to the final stage of Friday, stage 3, which is over there. So let's get in the car and go over there. Welcome to the final stage of Friday. This is stage 3 and stage 6. You can see we are not in the hills right now. So like stage 2, that ends in kind of scrubland like this. This is similar terrain. It's a bit dustier, a bit sandier, not quite such big rocks, but you can see in the distance behind me we've got some kind of hills and mountains. So this is the longest stage, 20 kilometers, and it goes into those hills and finishes there. So a bit of a test. And then the crews have got a 70+ kilometer drive back to service from here. So it's a bit of a trek. They'll do that prior to lunchtime service and obviously at the end of Friday to round out the day, so a bit of a trek there. Hopefully no issues back in the mountains there. It would obviously be a long way to have to drive back to service, wouldn't it, if you've got any issues. So different terrain here, but as you can see, it does quickly get hilly again, and it'll probably get a bit rocky up there. I might try and get to the end of that stage, but it might be a bit of a challenge, so we'll see how we get on there. But you can just see that the difference in the terrain. I said at the top of this video that for the WRC event, they're going to try and give us a real mix of terrain across the three days. And you can see that here, you know, we've gone from scrubland, mountains, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot sandy here, not such big stones, so big changes. So that is that. I think at this point we will cut back to home so I can talk about the runners and riders, talk about the crew, so you know who to look out for at the rally this weekend. So let's go home, we'll do a little break, and then we'll get back on the road and look at Saturday stages. And there we have it, back at home. A seamless transition. I think you'll agree. It was almost like magic. I should work in TV. Anyway, I thought it would be nice to just break things up a little bit and just talk through some of the entries. So we've got 27 cars on the entry list. If you are used to European rallies, that is not going to seem like very many, but I think we have to remember the context here. Saudi Arabia is not a big stage rallying nation. This is the first time the Middle East Championship has visited the kingdom since all the way back in 2010, and obviously this is a test event for the WRC effectively. So, you know, all of these cars have been imported. We haven't got any local stage rally entries. So I think it's important to remember that, and hopefully this will be a stepping stone to greater things in the future. Now, just because it is a small entry, that doesn't mean that there aren't some names on there worth discussing, particularly in Middle East Rally Championship terms. And in that domain, names don't come any bigger than 19-time champion and 5-time Dakar winner Nasser Al-Attiyah. He is competing the rally, leading the field away in a Skoda Fabia. So he is a driver that absolutely knows this kind of terrain, is an expert in these conditions, and I think you would be mad, completely mad, to bet against him for winning the rally. So he will lead the field, and given that he has already won the first 2 rounds of this year's championship, I'm going to say that he is the favourite for this one. Second on the road is Abdullah Al Rawahi. He is in an older model Fabia, so you may not be familiar with him, but you are probably familiar with the man in the co-driver seat. So Ross Whittock is joining him. You may know him from sitting alongside James Williams in the British and European Rally Championships this season. Starting in third is Qatar's Abdulaziz Al Kawari. He is driving the only Citroën C3 Rally 2 on the entry list. He is joined by another international co-driver in Ireland's Lorcan Moore. And starting fourth on the road is a crew that set some headlines last week and brings a fully international flavour. They have been entered by Toyota Gazoo Racing, none other than Juho Hannanen and Jani Hussey. Hannanen obviously brings a huge amount of experience, both in competition terms, having driven for the WRC team in the past, and also in car development terms. So the information that he takes back to the team after this event will be critical, obviously helping them to prepare for the WRC round later in the year. I think it is safe to say that the Finn is probably the most likely contender to Nasser Al-Attiyah for the win as well, so worth keeping an eye on what he does. You'll have to excuse the little bit of voiceover here. So we had a late entry in Rakan Al Rashid. He's a local driver. He starts behind Hannanen in a second Toyota Yaris. He's got plenty of gravel experience in Europe, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. He's been doing the Middle East Rally Championship this year. Behind him in sixth place is the cousin of the man at the front, so Nasser Khalifa Al-Attiyah. He's in a Fiesta Rally 2, the only one of those on the entry. And then rounding out the RC2 cars is Sheikh Badr Al Fayez, Ihab Al Sharafa and Basil Abu Hamdan. They are all in Skoda Fabias. Behind them, there is a decent entry of R4 type cars that is led by Shakir Jawan of Jordan out in front in a Mitsubishi Evo 10. It's also nice to see some Rally 4 cars on the entry, so we have a quartet of those. Those are led by Rashid Al Mohanadi in a Peugeot 208. And then the final 6 cars on the entry list are all Can-Am Mavericks. This is where the local interest comes in, as all of the Can-Ams are being driven by local drivers. Ahmed Al Shagawi is leading that field, so it's going to be interesting to see how they all get on, and it's nice to see some Saudi entries on the list, even if they are not near the front this time out. But there we are. It's just a quick run through of the entries. I thought it was worth going through that, especially with that international and Dakar interest on there. Do let me know in the comments who you think is going to win. But for now, let's get back out in the car and go and look at Saturday's stages with another seamless transition back to myself on the road. Boom, we're back in the desert, and this is quite deserty, as you can see. So welcome to stage 7 and stage 10, Al Khula. It's hot. So little secret confession to make, this is a different day to when I filmed Friday stages. That was a few days ago. Today we're a week out from the rally as I record this, and it is hot. So it is about 42 degrees where I am right now, and it's about 4 o'clock, so it is quite warm. Anyway, stage 7, you can see we are in kind of lowland territory. Stage runs off behind me. You've got some hills back there. I don't know if it quite reaches those. It looks like it turns off in that direction before it gets there. 11.99 kilometers. This one, we're about 50 kilometers from the service park, so about an hour's drive when they leave service to come here. There are also many, many pylons to get here. Over that way, I drove through many, many pylons. So yes, so this is it. You can see underneath my feet, it is a bit sandier here, but still quite hard packed ground near the start of the stage. Well, don't know if it changes too much getting in there, but the ground is fairly hard. There are some quite big stones on the ground though, so there is a little bit of jeopardy there. But yes, this is stage 7 and stage 10. I think it's going to be a warm one, dusty obviously, and the terrain is a little bit different. You can see it kind of, it's a bit darker if you look at the hills behind me. The ground is a bit darker, the rocks are a bit darker than the morning stages perhaps. There's not quite as much green in the lowlands. But obviously you can see we're in a bit of scrubland now. So this is stage 7, as I said. It's going to be dusty. There's some rocks, which you will see because I'll put some B-roll in here so you can see some rocks. So there is some chances of punctures here. So this is the afternoon. The rest of the stages this afternoon are in a similar area. So once we get to those, we will see what they look like and if there is anything different. So I think the best thing we can do at this stage is get back in the car and try and find stage 8. Stage 8, longest stage of the rally. I think it runs at 8 o'clock in the morning for the first one, but it's just under 27 kilometers. And I think this one, Asfan, is the one that will ring true. If you imagine a rally in Saudi Arabia, I suspect you imagine it to look like this one. So it goes off in that direction and it is dusty, sandy, deserty. I think this is, as I said, this is probably what you imagine a Saudi rally stage to look like, or a typical Middle East rally stage to look like. As you can see, the area near the start of the stage where I am right now is very, very flat. I've just come out of a little village. So we're near to the town of Asfan, which is actually near where the drift track is, in case you're wondering, if you watch my other videos, and where I did the autocross event in the Peugeot, which is over there somewhere. So as you can see, it's very flat here. The stage goes off that way, so it does look like it gets a little bit more hilly. As I say, it's nearly 27 kilometers all the way over there, and it finishes near a main road. So scrubland. If you're going to see a camel, you're probably going to see it on this stage, aren't you? So this is stage 8. What more can I say about it? It's quite empty, isn't it? There's not a lot here. I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere, even though I'm really near to a village and I can hear some kind of motorbike or quad bike in the different distance. I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere. It looks like I'm in the middle of nowhere. A few rocks and things dotted around though, but generally the surface it's quite rough. When I was driving to the start, it's got a little bit of that washboard feel to it, lots of little bumps, but generally you've got smooth bits. I can see a little bit of a jump over there that they might hit if I'm, this is so difficult to see where the exact part of the road is. So anyway, this is the terrain. This is what it looks like. This is stage 8 and stage 11. As you can see, it's quite different in character to some of the other ones that we've looked at in terms of the start, but obviously it goes a long way off over there. So there we go, quick look at stage 8. That just leaves one to go, doesn't it? 9 and 12. So I think we'd better get back in the car and head over there. So join me for the last stage in a few minutes, where we will conclude our little tour of Rally Saudi Arabia. We made it, the final stage. This is stage 9 and 12. There are many rocks and much sand. So quite an interesting landscape here, I think. So this is the shortest stage, 9.34 kilometers, I think. So a short stage, but an interesting one. So big rocks there, but not on the road so much. It's a bit tricky to see on Google Maps where we're actually going here. The road is not very clearly marked, but the surface is very interesting. So you've got quite a hard, compact surface in places with stones, and in other places, including the hill that I just walked up, which is why I'm out of breath, is very, very soft, very, very fine sand. And as I say that, there is a Nissan pickup truck driving up said hill. It is very, very soft, and you can probably hear it clattering away in the background. So the landscape is really, really interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see, we're near the start of the stage, so it's going to be interesting to see how this stage develops as they go through it, how much of it is compact, he says, trying not to fall over. Got dust all over my shoes. And how much of it ends up quite hard, compact. There's some stones, but they're not massive stones, so I don't think punctures would be a huge issue. So the road that I drove up here in, which you can see, maybe see the car in the distance down there, it's like a washboard, very, very hard, very, very bumpy, very rough. Obviously, if you're in a Rally 2 car, you're not really going to feel that, are you? But obviously those in cars lower down the order, you know, Rally 4 cars like I'm driving the road version of, they might find it a bit more hard going. But it very much depends, you know, we've got a very interesting landscape, quite changeable conditions. It's almost alien, isn't it, with the rocks in the background and just how desolate it is. If you look actually going back over there, you can just see Jeddah in the distance, kind of the northern part of Jeddah. We're kind of near a town called Asfan. So this is stage 9 and 12. As I said, the shortest of the rally. Last stage of the day, I think, is about 35 kilometers back to service from here. So hopefully no one will have any problems. But that's it. That is a look at Rally Saudi Arabia, the Middle East Rally Championship round, and potentially just a little sneak peek at the WRC event, or at least part of it, in November. So there we go. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I found the right spots on Google Maps. Otherwise, you've just had a tour of random spots of the Saudi countryside. So as I walk back down through the dust, back to my car to go home, I will say, as always, please like and subscribe. Make sure you follow me over on socials. Thank you, as always, for watching and for all of your support. Let me know what you think of what you've seen and whether you've got any favourites for the rally. And as always, I will see you next time.